In this video, we once again present an overview of the rarest birds seen in the Netherlands over the past 2 weeks. We start with newly discovered mega rarities, followed by lingering individuals, and then move on to some news about slightly less rare species. After this beautiful male little crake was discovered in early April, things went quiet for the species. It wasn't until June 10th that a singing bird was noticed. Actually, it turned out to be 2 birds very close together. Once again, this happened in northwestern Overijssel, a well-known hotspot for the species. These represent the 90th and 91st record for the Netherlands, and the 33rd and 34th in the past 10 years. If 2 more are recorded this year, the average of at least 2 records per year over the last 30 years will be met, meaning the species will no longer need to be submitted for review. There are, however, few submission species with more than 90 accepted records. This is largely due to many older accepted records. For instance, between 1955 and 1970, no fewer than 20 were caught in northwestern Overijssel alone. That it can be worthwhile to check sandwich tern colonies in late spring and summer is proven once again by the second Roshia tern in 2 weeks, which appeared in the colony at Wagehild on Texel. It's definitely a different bird from the one seen on May 30th, as this one was wearing a metal ring and had damage to one of its tail feathers. If all sightings from this year are accepted, this will be the 65th record for the Netherlands, and the 3rd Roshia tern self-found by this well-known birder. While I was enjoying some time off with my wife and kids at a holiday park in Flevoland, it turned out on the 13th that a bearded vulture, released earlier in the German Alps as part of a reintroduction project, had arrived in the Netherlands. Like many individuals from the same project, this bird was fitted with a GPS transmitter. The next day, it was decided to share the tracking data with the Dutch birding community. The bird was found that evening perched in a tree on the edge of the city of Groningen and was seen by many birders and local residents. The following day, it continued its journey back towards Germany, but was later found weakened and taken to a rescue center with the aim of releasing it again once it has recovered. On June 20th, another bearded vulture was spotted flying towards the city of Groningen. This one had no GPS tag. Roughly 3 hours later, likely the same bird, was photographed in a field in North Holland. Unfortunately, this report came in too late for anyone to relocate the bird. A day later, the bird was picked up much further south, in the province of Zeeland, but it slowly followed the coast, heading southwards. Bearded vultures are not accepted as wild birds in the Netherlands and are therefore no part of the official Dutch list. However, as mentioned before, many people see it differently, and GPS tag or not, such a bird always generates a lot of excitement, so we are covering it here anyway. But it wasn't all about vultures. Rare eagles were still flying around too. On June 30th, a lesser spotted eagle was observed flying over a garden near the Biesbos. The observer managed to get excellent photos. Up to and including 2024, there have been 28 records of this species in the Netherlands, of which only 3 were twitchable, in 1984, 2005 and 2021. One of the most remarkable sightings of this period was a crested lark that was foraging on a farmyard in Flevoland on June 11th. It was only a 20-minute drive from where I was on holiday at the time. The bird was found late in the evening during filming about moths on farmyards. Unfortunately, and actually a bit contrary to expectations, the bird was nowhere to be found the next day, despite a search effort by 10 birders. Since January 1st, 2015, Crested Lark has been reviewed by the Dutch Rarities Committee again, and it has gone from being a fairly common breeding bird with an estimated 10,000 pairs to a mega rarity. We won't go into the reasons for that here, but what's good to know, though, is that even though the species isn't particularly known as a migrant, there is still a sneaky chance that one might show up. Since 2015, including this one, there have been 8 records deemed acceptable. One of those was a large bird from a previous known territory. Of those, 5 were seen flying past migration watchpoints, 3 in Zeeland, 1 in Groningen and 1 in Limburg. The last twitchable bird was in 2020 in Apeldoorn. Where these wandering individuals come from is anyone's guess. possibly from small remnant populations in neighboring countries, but who knows, maybe even further afield. On June 20th, a report came in of a searle bunting present in Limburg. However, the observer has a questionable history, having previously reported several rarities in Germany, but using stolen photos of other birds, so it's very doubtful whether this record is legitimate. In any case, there were no follow-up sightings. In total, there have been 11 accepted records of searle bunting in the Netherlands. Between 2018 and 2020, there were 5, but now it's been almost 5 years of silence regarding the species, which doesn't even breed that far from our borders. That concludes the newly discovered review species. There were also some lingering birds, starting with the Falcated Duck. The Limburg bird was still seen until June 13th. In addition, an escaped individual was seen near Kampen, which is not far from where an unringed bird was present earlier this year, although that doesn't necessarily have to stand in the way of that earlier record being accepted. The Spectacledider was last seen on June 11th, even a bit further north than where it had been before. The bird was seen on the outer edge of the breakwater. It hasn't been seen for 11 days now. If it does show up again, you'll of course hear about it here. One bird that just stoically remains in place is of course our friend the pygmy cormorant. As for the greater spotted eagle, which was seen near Zwolle until June 6th, it turned out the bird hadn't left the country yet. On June 12th, it was observed again in a meadowbird reserve in Friesland. The next day, the same observer, who was on his way to see a Griffon Vulture, saw the eagle flying past again, a bit north of the previous location. After that, the bird has not been seen again. Based on plumage characteristics, it appears to have been the same individual the whole time. A bird that just barely made it into this overview is the Scopsaw in Weert, which was last heard during the night of June 8th to 9th. On May 1st and 16th, an Iberian chaff was heard and recorded in Limburg, right on the Belgian border. I don't know if anyone actively searched for it, but the bird wasn't reported again until June 9th, when another sighting from the same spot appeared, again with an attached recording of the song, which sounds very convincing for Iberian chaff. Whether it will be accepted without a photo and recording of the call, I can't say, but it's certainly remarkable that the bird was only observed 3 times over such a long period. Meanwhile, the female Iberian chaff van Schimmende Koog was still busy feeding her hybrid young. On June 20th, both the female and at least one fledgling were still there. There were also some very rare species that no longer require formal review, starting with yet another green-winged teal, a species that no longer holds full species status in the New World List of Avilist, but is still treated as a separate species in the Netherlands. On June 11th, one was present at Hunsedal, a site where this species had been found multiple times in the past. Finally, the first Quacko herons of the year started appearing. On June 9th, a very cooperative individual was found just south of Maastricht. This bird remained there until the 13th. On June 12th, the second bird showed up near Warmond, where it could be admired all day, but it was gone the next day. Early on June 13th, another individual was found at Budeldorpplein, where it stayed until the 15th. On June 20th, a bird was seen flying over Leiden, and the next day another overflying bird was photographed at the Nieuwkoopse Plassen, where it seemed to land but couldn't be relocated. The black guillemot around Vlissingen was also still present throughout the entire period and occasionally offered great photographic opportunities. Up until June 11th, an American golden plover was still present on the salt marshes of Texel. During this period, a decent number of Griffon Vultures passed over the country once again, with a few individuals lingering. Particularly popular were 2, and later one bird near Cubaert and another at Oldgoedsplaat. As for woodshed strikes, it wasn't over yet either. 4 more new birds were discovered. On June 8th, one was found in Gelderland. The observer initially struggled to document the bird and then lost track of it, but thankfully it was refound later that evening. The last report of that bird came on June 19th. On June 10th, another bird was present in Zeeland. The next day, yet another was seen on Ameland, and another in the North Holland Dune Reserve. Both of these were one-day birds. Off the top of my head, the total for this year is already well over 10 records, making it one of the best, if not the best year ever for the species in the Netherlands. A lingering bird from the previous period that just made it into this overview was the Blijfsvliet warbler in Eemshaven. With only one sighting of the species all spring, it's been a relatively poor year for it. In general, it's been rather sparse when it comes to those rare eastern warblers you normally expect in the Netherlands in late May and June, species like river warbler and thrush nightingale, of which just a single individual of each was reported. I saw on Facebook that at the Skagen ringing station in Denmark, they caught 40% fewer birds than usual in spring. Whether that's due to a poor breeding season the previous year, or unfavorable migration conditions for reaching Western Europe, remains uncertain, likely a combination of both. A species that falls somewhat into the same category is the greenish warbler. 2 individuals were reported this year. The first one was from last period in Leeuwarden, and then on June 8th another bird was present on the inaccessible island of Rottumerplaat. Melodious warblers are still present here and there in the south of the country. One particularly popular individual, that's also fairly easy to observe, is the bird currently residing near the lookout point at Quacko. And we finish with a special sighting of a singing yellow-browed warbler that was present for just one day near Enkhuizen on June 14th. This is the first verified record of yellow-browed warbler in June in the Netherlands. If you're new to this rarities update, make sure you have subscribed. A like is highly appreciated. And I'll see you next time.